Hello and welcome to the Football Malarkey podcast. I am Simon Doyle. It is March 1st, Monday, after a weekend full of decent games, both across the Premier League and La Liga. There were a couple of big games in Germany I didn't get to see myself, but I'm going to go into some of the Premier League's biggest games today and a couple from Spain as well. Biggest game of the weekend. No surprise where I'm starting. Chelsea 0, Manchester United 0. Bit of a controversial game. A game that overall I think a draw was a deserved result for both teams. Chelsea definitely shaded the better of the chances. Giroud with a header in the first half that he's only a couple of inches away from getting his head on, which would have surely been a goal. David De Gea then made a very good save in the second half from, I think it was Hakim Ziyech, from a shot just inside the box. It was fairly point blank. It was a good save from De Gea, the type of save that we know he is proficient in. Other than that, there wasn't too many chances to speak of. Manchester United opened a couple of opportunities on the counter-attack to play some players in, which for what should have been a big chance, and failed to take those opportunities, most notably in the second half when Scott McTominay got the ball on the right hand side. Had three runners through the middle and to the left of the box, between Dan James, Bruno, and I think the other being Marcus Rashford, or maybe it was Mason Greenwood. I can't recall, but there was three runners. McTominay fails to beat the first man. Reece James pretty much defending the cross on his own. If it beats him, surely one of those players is in, but couldn't execute that pass. McTominay. United were reliant kind of on those chances. If they were going to get any sort of goal, there wasn't any great chance creation from general attack, from their general attacking play. Luke Shaw did get in once in the second half as well, down the left hand side, and put a decent ball back, but it didn't really fall to anyone's feet. It came out the other side to Wan-Bissaka, and McTominay had a shot that was well saved by the keeper, but it was never likely to go in from the angle he was hitting it at. So a 0-0, and probably a deserved 0-0 overall. Like I said, Chelsea shaded the XG, the expected goals, but I don't think it would have been a fair result for either team to walk away with the win. The controversy came, of course, from another contentious penalty call. This one not going in United's favour again, which has happened a lot more than not recently. A handball from Callum Hudson-Odoi when the ball bounced up and he was trying to go for the ball with Mason Greenwood. I don't think Hudson-Odoi means to handle the ball. I think him and Greenwood are both putting their arms out to battle each other, to engage each other, to try and get there first. However, his hand is in an unnatural position. He gains an advantage from the ball hitting his hand. I think technically it should be a penalty, and I think apparently the referee even said as much to Harry Maguire on the pitch, but essentially didn't want to give it because of the controversy it might cause. Solskjaer reiterated this in his post-match interview as well. It is absolutely baffling and a very sad indictment on the refereeing standards in the Premier League if referees are making calls based on how people on social media and the press in general are going to react. That's not what they're there for. We could all make calls based on what other people might say. It would lead to terrible officiating, and that's why we have professionals in there. People who are supposed to be able to control the game and make decisions in spite of what might be going on around them. So when a referee can't do that, are they fit for purpose in the Premier League? We have to ask that question, and I'll be very surprised if there isn't a serious inquest into the referee's decision making for not giving the penalty. Like I was saying, I do think it would have been, like, it wasn't the most intentional handball you'll ever see at all. But an issue that I had with it personally was it just, again, watching the referee look at the VAR monitor. He goes over, obviously the video assistant referee does his job. He alerts the referee to the situation because it's hard to see in real time. Calls him over to the monitor. He has a look. He is looking at the monitor, and you can see from behind what he's seeing. And he's seeing a replay of the same angle 3 or 4 different times in slow motion. So there's 2 issues there. One, surely the referee should be given every angle to see the incident. It should be 3 to 4 angles at least for him to see the incident in, because one angle, it might look like something that it's not. And on top of that, if everything's in slow motion, and I spoke about this having watched a game in Liga in France last week where it was the same situation. It was a penalty that was given for handball, which I didn't think was intentional at all last week. And again, that referee doesn't see the replay in real time. He sees it all in slow motion. So surely the referee should be seeing multiple angles, both in real time and in slow motion. Yes, I understand that might take a little more time, but if we're going to be pausing the game for the referee to go over and look at a monitor anyway, at least do it properly. Don't just half-ass it and show him one angle, or possibly 2 at a maximum, in slow motion, in which when you're looking at things in slow motion, they can look a lot more intentional than they actually are, and you can't tell the difference between what's a bit more accidental than what's intentional. So I had a serious issue watching that unfold. I thought it was just badly handled in general between the VAR and because they're the ones that decide what camera angles the referee sees. So why does the VAR determine that this is the only angle for you to see? And the one he shows is the one from behind, which looks a little bit like Greenwood's arm gets to it first before Hudson-Odoi's hand, which it didn't. And you can see that from the other angles. But from the angle they showed him, it wasn't the clearest angle. So I'm baffled as to why that was the only angle that the referee gets shown. I think it's just another piece of evidence of the misuse of VAR in the Premier League, because the issue isn't the technology itself. Nobody's complaining about there being more cameras. People are complaining about how it's being utilised and how it's being interpreted by referees and the VAR teams, and there's a lot of cleaning up to do in that respect in the Premier League. They are way off where they should be in terms of how they utilise this technology. But the game as a whole, United have another 0-0 draw against a typical top 6 team, a team that is typically challenging for a Champions League spot. Chelsea are at this time. On one hand, you look at the 2-0 against Chelsea, the one against Liverpool, the one against City. We had another one against Arsenal, who are typically a top 6 team. Probably won't be this season by the looks of it at the moment, but could still possibly sneak in. On one hand, you think it shows a great defensive record. You can go you can go head to head with so many of these teams and not concede. There has to be something said for that. On the other hand, we're not scoring in these games, and that is a big problem, a very big problem. I think the only goal we've gotten against any traditional top 6 team was the penalty against Spurs in the 6-1 loss. Other than that, we lose 1-0 to Arsenal via a penalty as well. 0-0 with Arsenal, 0-0 with Liverpool, 0-0 with City, 0-0 twice with Chelsea. The chance creation across most of those games was minimal. The chances we've given away have been minimal. So we are at a point where we're going toe-to-toe with these teams and we're creating a tight game. a tight game that we don't seem to have the answer as to how to come out on top of. Having said that, I'm viewing everything that's happening under Manchester United under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer in terms of the 3-year plan, which I spoke of before. He came in at first, obviously, as a caretaker manager. It was only decided later on that season that he would be getting the full-time gig, and starting from that summer, he was executing a 3-year plan that he had agreed with Ed Woodward and the United board, which was to see United come into a position where in his 3rd full year they could challenge for the Premier League title, timing it with a guesstimated a guesstimated retreat of Manchester City and Liverpool's capabilities, because at the time they were flying. Into the next year they would be flying. Into this year, City have come back again and are flying again. The idea from Solskjaer and the board was to rebuild the team, which needed much rebuilding, to take the couple of years that it would need to get rid of the deadwood in the squad, of which Solskjaer has done a fantastic job, and bring in suitable replacements and upgrade the squad over those couple of years. On that front, I would say that the squad is in a better position overall, but that much more could have been done. And that, I don't think, can be laid at the feet of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at all. Because I think it's more than evident that he wanted 1, 2, maybe 3 other players of a high caliber in the squad already. And now we find ourselves in a position where, realistically, to challenge for the league next season, if City are going to be anywhere near what they are now, if Liverpool are going to be anything near what they were last year, not to mention what Chelsea might do under Tuchel, if we're going to be anywhere near good enough to win the league, we are approximately 4 serious signings away from that, in my opinion. There are too many holes to plug in one summer for United to catch up to where Manchester City are now. Now, we might not have to. City might have regressed enough in going into next year, and Liverpool may have plateaued and remain at a similar level to what they are now, although I think they're going to be a bit better again. That perhaps we don't need a team that can get 95 points. It's possible that it could be won on closer to 85. But we're banking on a lot of other clubs failing rather than us reaching for perfection, which is what we should be doing, which is what Liverpool have done recently, which is what Manchester City have done recently. Within that 3-year plan, I should say, the first year we saw United win a lot of big games, because they were happy, given the nature of the squad, given it was the first year of the rebuild, to go in as the underdog, to sit deep, counter-attack. This was, you almost use as a criticism against Solskjaer a lot, because it didn't work against a lot of teams that were more mid to low table. That was a fair criticism. At the same time, if, again, we look at it in terms of a 3-year plan, the idea was try sort out the defence in a low block in an organised fashion and counter-attack. We have the players for that. You bring in a couple of players who suit it, 3 players who suit it, in fact, in Wan-Bissaka, Maguire and James. I'm sure they did want Bruno at the time, had to wait till January. And you build from there. In the second season, I think we saw it start to happen after lockdown. Obviously, they couldn't have predicted the whole lockdown situation. The post-lockdown United were a bit more on the front foot, were a bit more willing to try and control possession. They weren't just looking to play on the counter-attack. Obviously, Bruno had come in the January, gave the team a big uplift. Who knows what the season might have looked like if he had come in the summer. I don't think we would have been anywhere near Liverpool and City, and we probably still would only finish third, which we did in the end anyway, but it would have been a much more comfortable and convincing ride, you would think, and we wouldn't have had to rely on Leicester falling off so dramatically. Pogba comes back into the team at that stage, and United are looking to control games a bit more, and they do quite well in the lockdown. I think it was 11 games, won 8, drew 3, got over the line, got into third place, move on to the next season. The next season, which is this current one, the idea was that we should be able to control games more. We should be able to go into these games looking to control the game against mid to low table sides, and against the higher end sides, go toe to toe with them and see who comes out on top. We are doing that more. We are not just sitting back and looking to counter attack. It's not that rudimentary of a plan anymore. There is more of a front foot approach. We're still not there in terms of being good enough to actually do that and win these games. Again, credit has to go to the team for not conceding in any of these games, but when I say any, obviously we lost to Arsenal 1-0 and we got hammered by Spurs. Those two games did come in a time where it was very early in the season. We had no pre-season, which I do think was a huge factor. Since then, any big game we've gone into, it's been a 0-0 draw. You should count Leicester as a big game too. That was a 2-2 draw. In fairness, like, they should be ranked ahead of Arsenal in terms of their current reputation in the Premier League, although Arsenal did just beat them 3-1 yesterday. But I think overall no one would argue at the moment that Leicester are a more formidable side than Arsenal overall. So you can put that one down as a game that United did score goals in, also conceded the 2, still only a draw. A game that we should have won. It was frustrating to throw that away late. But at the end of the day, they didn't get the job done. And that's been the case in all of these games. So they're very frustrating games in a sense that we don't know what to take from them. There's pluses and minuses, and it feels very in between. It's a reluctant acceptance of the result, I think, from most United fans. And I'm sure the idea is for the third year next season to be able to dominate and win most of these games. And that's what you have to do if you're going to win the league. You don't have to win all of them. No team wins all of them. Even the City team that got 100 points didn't win all of them. But you have to win most of them. You have to essentially win that mini table of the traditional top 6, but also the teams that are pushing for Champions League spots and will end up there. You'd have to say, like, we can, if we want to be, I'm sure United would point out that technically West Ham and Everton are above Arsenal, Tottenham, even Liverpool at the moment. Although Liverpool won yesterday, I'm not sure how the table currently balances out. I think Everton are just behind them, having won today as well, but have a game in hand. United beat West Ham away in the league, at home in the cup. We had to play them at home in the league. They beat Everton away in the league, beat them away in the League Cup, drew at home frustratingly recently. So, in fairness, if we're looking at the actual top 6 this season, United have won some games, but it's still not an acceptable record if you want to talk about challenging for a league title. It's not good enough. I'm sure United know this. This isn't a surprise. I don't think they're walking away thinking that was great. Of course not. And maybe this was always going to be the case with this second season of the rebuild. Maybe it was always going to be a case of just falling short. But it's definitely frustrating. It's definitely frustrating to watch. They still have a few big games left to play. We've got City this weekend away from home, which will be probably the toughest game we have left this season. We've got to go away to Spurs, and we have to go... Liverpool come to Old Trafford. Liverpool we've also beaten in the cup, in fairness. We've beaten a lot of these teams in the cup, but not in the league. So there's still a little bit of time. If we can win those 3 games, I mean, and overall the record doesn't look too bad, but it's still not good enough if you want to be challenging for league titles. The league title is gone obviously now for United. I'm not saying United are still in it. They're not. It is done. I think we are in a race now to solidify second place. I think if we don't finish second, it will be a failure this season. Absolutely. There's no way we should be finishing behind this current Leicester side or Chelsea, who were almost 10 points behind us not so long ago. So that wouldn't be an acceptable end to the season. We have to finish second, in my opinion. We should be making it comfortable too. When I say comfortable, I mean 5-6 points. I think we should be good enough from now to the end of the season to finish 5-6 points ahead of this Leicester side or Chelsea, whoever takes the space. I'm certain it'll be one of them. I'd be very shocked if West Ham can hang around, and I don't think Liverpool or Everton are going to quite have enough to catch up all the way. But yeah, second place should be the aim. Finish it. Obviously the cups are a different matter, and then go and get those 4 signings that are needed in the summer. When I say 4 signings, I mean a sufficient centre-back who allows us to play higher up the pitch. Because in the partnership of Maguire and Lindelof, we don't have a sufficient backline to be able to play high up the pitch. And what I mean by that is they get caught by anything in behind them because they don't have the pace, which means that they drop off a little earlier, which doesn't allow us to apply the proper pressure in midfield. And therefore we can't sustain the ball high up as much as we should be able to. We need someone with a bit more pace who can read the game extremely well and essentially play as that covering centre-back. Bailly does it very well when he plays beside Maguire, but he's made of glass, we know this. He's also not the best at progressing the ball. I think he's not bad at it, but he's not the best. He's not as good as Lindelof. If you could merge Lindelof and Bailly, we'd have a world-class centre-back to play beside Maguire. But I'm pretty sure that's illegal, so we're going to have to find someone new. And someone who can take that mantle of playing that position. I think we really need that, and I really think that could help the team in so many areas, besides just defensively. We need a proper number 6, a defensive midfielder, someone who can hold that area on their own, rather than needing a double pivot of Fred and McTominay or Matic plus 1, maybe Pogba's in there at times. We need to be able to comfortably play with a more attacking midfielder. So Pogba, if he goes, you have to replace him too, and then the number 10 ahead of him being Bruno. You have to be able to play with those two and have your one sitting midfielder if we want to reach the levels that we want to reach. Who that is, I don't know exactly. It doesn't necessarily have to be someone who is particularly strong defensively. We don't particularly need someone that puts tackles in all over the pitch, because if we're looking to dominate the ball a lot more than we currently do, and we get that proper centre back in, and then we get a proper number 6 who is extremely proficient in keeping the ball and progressing play from deep, someone like Ruben Neves perhaps, that could work perfectly as well. That's exactly what we had when we had Michael Carrick playing there. Michael Carrick was not running all around putting tackles in. He was extremely good in his defensive positioning and made a lot of interceptions because he read the game so well and was very calm. But his strengths were when he was on the ball, and he would conduct play from that deep midfield position, and he could play the ball to anyone from anywhere. I think that's more the mould that United should be looking to replicate in that midfield. So let's say we have, is that centre back Jules Koundé? Maybe. I've not been too impressed by him recently. Haven't watched him this weekend against Barcelona and also against Dortmund last week in the Champions League. Perhaps it's him. Perhaps it'll have to be someone else. Is that number 6 Ruben Neves? Maybe. Let's argue and say it is Koundé and Neves after that. And primarily, actually, I think our number 1 target has to be a right winger. For me, there's no better man than Jadon Sancho to go and get. Yes, I know he's played a lot of his games on the left this season, but he's played a large amount of games on the right as well for Dortmund. He can do that just as comfortably. We don't have a right winger, which is a big problem. So the right winger situations needs to be addressed. Dan James has come in and done very well in recent games. He's a very good squad player to have. He'll give 100%. He's very, very fast, got a lot of energy. He's not a world-class player. He's not going to get double digits in goals and assists every season. We need that player. Jadon Sancho is that man. Go and get him. We need Sancho. Let's say it's Sancho. Let's argue, for argument's sake, that it's Neves and Koundé. It could be multiple players in those positions. For me, when we're talking about the right wing, the man is Sancho and no one else really. And we need a striker. We've come to the point. I thought if we got that right winger, Mason Greenwood doesn't need to play out there as much and then can play down the centre. We've got him, Martial and Cavani. No problem. Now, I haven't really been talking about having United have a striker in up until the last 4 to 6 weeks. And what's gotten me to that point is how poor Anthony Martial has been and how little he seems to be turning his form around. He seems stuck in this, what would you call it? Just this perpetual state of playing in a slump. He's coming on with very little energy, very little confidence. Every little bit of interaction he has in the game, whatever kind of touch or movements he makes seem off. They seem like he's doing them almost in an anticipation that it's not going to come off, which is a sign of low confidence. And it's really hurting Manchester United at this moment that he was supposed to be the main number 9. Ole banked a lot on him. He did the job last year, although I thought for the first 2/3 of the season he wasn't playing all that well, but he was keeping himself up there in terms of goals and assists. He was doing well in that regard. I thought after lockdown, I thought he was our best player in that stretch of 11 games. I thought he was superb. I was very, very impressed with not only his output, but most importantly his performances. And I thought, if this is the Martial we're going to have, then we have a serious player on our hands. We have a player who could be one of the best number 9s in the world within a year or two if he keeps this up. He hasn't even been close. He's not even as good as he was in the first 2/3 of last season, where I thought his performances were a bit under par. This is beyond under par. He is not contributing anything to Manchester United at the moment. And for a player that we're banking on to do so, for a player that has been here as long as he has, is now in his mid-20s and is paid what we pay him, it's not even remotely close to acceptable what we've seen from him this year. I said not so long ago that if he doesn't pick it up and if we don't see if we don't see him reinvigorated and playing anywhere close to what he is or what he was last year, we should get rid of him. And I've already gotten to the point where I think we should get rid of him, because this has been 6 months now of poor form. We can't accept that at Manchester United, and with any player, let alone a player you're hanging your hat on to lead the line and get goals and assists. It's not anywhere near good enough. And frankly, the fact that we're second, given that Martial has been so bad, Greenwood had a very poor start to the season and has only in recent times looked like getting anywhere back to himself. Cavani missed so much of the early part of the season and has had just patches of appearances because of suspensions and injuries. He's only got, I think, 7-8 goals this season. It's not a great return. I've liked his performances. I like Cavani. I think he's bringing a lot to the team when he does play. He's not playing an awful lot. Given that, and given that Dan James as well has only recently come back into the team, it's frankly a bit of a minor miracle that we're second. We've basically banked it all on Bruno and Rashford having such good seasons. Rashford, I think, performance-wise, he's had a lot of poor performances lately. He's had some good ones too, interspersed. I thought he was decent again yesterday, not his best, but he's been a little better in recent games, I thought, in terms of his overall performance. We've been relying on those two, and with a dash of Paul Pogba on top of that, coming up clutch in a few games, a few tight games. Again, it's not good enough, not just because it's Manchester United, it's not good enough given the squad that we have. There should be a lot more from that squad in terms of goals and assists, a lot more. I think we're the top goal scorers in the Premier League, and I don't know how. That 9-0 against Southampton obviously aided a lot, contributed to that significantly, but frankly, how we are the top goal scorers in the league, or very close to it at least, is beyond me, and I wonder where we could be if more of those forwards were actually contributing as they should be. So it's a bit of a minor miracle that we're there in that respect. So for the rest of the season, like I said, we should be looking to comfortably finish second. Not make it a last day affair again. In terms of deciding who finishes where in the top four, we should be second, clear of Leicester or whoever's in third for the last few weeks of the season. That should be our aim. Hopefully from there, if we've gotten ourselves to an FA Cup final and or a Europa League final, we can focus on them in the last few weeks in the season rather than the league, which should not be a tight run affair when we get to the business end. So that's the aim. Go get the players in the summer and have a proper go next season. I didn't touch on who the striker should be. Erling Haaland obviously comes to everyone's mind. Are you going to get both Haaland and Sancho from Dortmund right now? No. I'd gladly take either of them. For me, I do think Sancho is probably the priority, because we just don't have a right winger, let alone the state of our right wing. Okay, Ahmad is probably a right winger, but there's no way you should be putting that kind of pressure on that kid so early. He needs a couple of years to establish himself in the team. If not Haaland, who? I'm not sure. If we're getting rid of Martial, you can maybe get someone a bit more senior to give Mason Greenwood a couple of years to establish himself as the proper number 9. If it was possible, I think a cheeky bid for Harry Kane. Bit obvious, I know, but might be perfect. I don't think he's fully enjoying himself under Mourinho. Looks like a lot of Spurs players aren't. If we were properly putting a team together that looked like it could win the league, does he move to try and get himself a league title before his career is done? He's head at 28 now, Harry Kane. Not a whole lot of time left. He's probably not going to win one at Spurs. Would he be tempted by that? I think it's possible. Would Spurs let that happen? Not for a serious amount of cash, if that. And if they're keeping Mourinho this summer, then that'll essentially be his resignation letter, because I don't think he'd stick around if the club sold Harry Kane. So, other than that, I'm not sure, but United need someone, and they need to move on Martial. Greenwood will eventually be that player. Keep Cavani around for another year or two. That should be the plan going forward. So striker, right winger, defence, midfield, centre back. If Paul Pogba goes, United might need to add a central midfielder to that list as well, depending on how Ole wants to play next season. Can Donny van de Beek slip in? He can't do the same role as Pogba, but if they change the team slightly, could he play a different role? Yeah. We'll have to wait and see. But there's a lot of... That's why I'm saying there's still a lot of work, and you could argue for another attack-minded right back as well. So, you could also argue for another goalkeeper because of David De Gea's form. So yeah, it does for me. There's still, I don't know how we're gonna get the squad that's required to challenge for the league next season. I think typically the Glazers and Ed Woodward have left too much to be done for that to be accomplished in one summer. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, I've rambled on about one game for a long time. I do apologise. I am a Manchester United fan. But some other notable games this weekend in the Premier League. Manchester City 2, West Ham 1. A tight win for City. West Ham actually shaded the XG in this game. They had the better expected goals, surprisingly enough. They did look decent, West Ham, on their counter attack. They obviously set up with a mid to low block, which was very well organised. Didn't allow City much space to play through them. City didn't seem at their best. They weren't their most fluid. They weren't their most energetic, which led to a bit of a stalemate in a sense. City did open the scoring though early enough, with De Bruyne sending in a fantastic cross from a deeper right position with his left foot, I think, right over the defence towards the back post where Stones and Diaz were there. It hadn't developed from open play, obviously. It was just after a set piece, hence why they were up there. And Diaz met the ball brilliantly in the air to smack home a header. The only thing I would say, like, Diaz and Stones have scored a fair few goals between them in recent months. And I can't help but think every time I see these players getting up in, like, they score a lot of these goals against teams that typically pride themselves on defending aerial balls. West Ham started with Dawson and I can't remember who started beside him. I think it was Diop. Whether it's Dawson, Diop, Ogbonna, these players are there to win the aerial duels. And they got very easily beat. It was a great ball by De Bruyne, but they got very easily beaten on the blind side by Manchester City centre-backs for that goal. And Stones only just missed the ball as well, so he could have gotten onto the end of it too. So I find it disappointing when I'm watching these City goals and I'm thinking, how, like, you think they're going to score goals by some brilliant football and score a brilliant goal through positional play and their cutbacks and everything that Manchester City typically do, or a bit of brilliance from one of their attackers or midfielders. So many of their goals are being scored by their centre-backs just beating their opposition centre-backs in the air. Yes, the deliveries are very good, but it's just frustrating to watch as a United fan that these centre-backs who are literally there primarily for their defensive ability in the air, and they're not dealing with them. But West Ham did get an equaliser, a very good equaliser, just in the counter. They won the ball in City's half. Koufal made a great run up the right hand side, which was left quite vacant. Torres didn't track him at all. He went to sleep. He got in around the side. Koufal cut it back to Lingard, who was in great form for City. I think Lingard actually played the ball initially out to Koufal, or it might have been Fornells. I can't remember now. Hits the ball towards the goal. I think it's going in anyway, but Antonio was there on the line to make sure it goes in because it was under threat from one of the City defenders of being stopped. So it was a lovely counter-attacking goal from West Ham, and they deserved it. And like I said, they did edge the XG. They had decent chances in this game. They were few and far between because of the way they were playing. They were relying on the counter-attack and relying on a City slip-up or a press going well. But City weren't making much in the other direction. They were finding West Ham's defensive block quite draining to play through and around, which is unusual for City. Usually they're happy to just knock the ball around all day. Probably has a lot to do with being in Europe midweek. But they weren't creating a whole lot of chances. West Ham looked quite good, but got foiled again by the other centre-back, John Stones. This time, I think play again broke down from a set piece. It came back down the right hand side. It was cut back. Stones is all alone to finish it brilliantly. It's a great finish. It wasn't a header this time. He dispatched it just like Aguero would. Solid right foot shot. The keeper had no chance. It came to the crowd a bit. But why was he unmarked? Again, West Ham building their entire game plan relies on their defensive stability, and both of those goals, I'm sure they'll look back and think that was poor, that was defendable. And given how well they did otherwise and how well they counter-attacked, and like I said, they made plenty of chances, West Ham, to have gotten two, 3 goals. They have to look at those 2 goals, I think, and have a bit of an inquest into why the defending was so bad, because if it wasn't for that, they could well have gotten arguably even a win in this game, West Ham. Such was the balance of play. So yeah, they could have snatched an equaliser at the end too. Diop got up for had a chance towards the end. He seemed to be heading it back down towards one of his teammates instead of just hitting it right towards goal. I don't really know why. It was a decent chance, but it wasn't to be. City sneak home a 2-1 win. West Ham left a bit frustrated, but I'm sure overall happy with their performance. The performance levels have certainly been very good and very consistent this year under David Moyes, doing exactly what he used to do with his old Everton team. And it's about time someone gave him the proper backing to do it again, because he got an unfair reputation for a few years given what happened at United, and I think he chose a couple of the wrong jobs after that. But West Ham seems to be a good fit for him, and I think they should be doing what they can do to give him what he needs to succeed, because I think he'll be able to keep them at least in the top half. It'll be hard to stay where they are now, even for the rest of the season, let alone future seasons, but they definitely have the potential to remain a solid top half team and sometimes get into Europe, and there's no reason why David Moyes can't deliver them that. So elsewhere, Leeds 0, Aston Villa 1. Another very tight game. An early goal from Villa in what was otherwise a game of a few chances for both sides. It was fairly even. I think Leeds did just edge the expected goals just by a bit. It wasn't too many great chances, but there was quite a few half chances for either team. The goal came from, again, after the breakdown of a set piece. Ollie Watkins got the ball just outside the box. It looks like he's going to shoot and he slips, and the ball goes just behind the Leeds defence, and where Al Ghazi is the first man onto it. He takes a decent first touch, gets to the ball next and slots it home after the Leeds defence had been essentially caught napping a bit. They were getting out from the previous set piece but didn't get out quick enough. I think Cooper was the deepest back and kept Al Ghazi on. If you look at the replays, they're all ball watching a little bit, Leeds, and it's a bit poor because when that ball comes back in, they're all heading one direction, Al Ghazi's heading the other, so he has the momentum. But it could have a bit more close attention to Al Ghazi could have prevented that, because if you're just running out as a defence but there's no pressure on the ball, the player who has it, Ollie Watkins in this instance, has an advantage of playing when he plays the ball over the top. It buys the attacking team more time when the defensive team is going out and they're going the other direction, because the momentum is taking them apart. As well, from the replay, you'll see that Ollie Watkins, you can see him look up and look exactly at where Al Ghazi is running. So yes, he does slip. I'm not sure he was trying to shoot. I think the pass might have been intentional, and it might have just been lucky that it just went where it was supposed to go anyway. That's what it looked like to me. Maybe he was shooting, maybe just to get lucky. Either way, I think it's a bit criminal defensively if you're all running out of the box but no one's actually putting pressure on the ball. I think unless there's pressure on the ball, don't all run out at once, because you're going to leave the chance for someone to just put the ball over the top like Watkins did. So Yeah, the game went back and forth from there and was fairly even. Rafinha had a decent chance at the end to snatch a draw, a headed chance. It wasn't a great chance, but it was probably the best chance the Leeds had towards the end of the game. And yeah, a loss for Leeds, having won 3-0 midweek against Southampton. But no big deal, because as I've been saying, I think I've been saying it for 3 months now, the form that Leeds are in. They win a game, they lose the next one, they draw one, they win one, maybe they draw again, then they lose one, then they win two, and they draw one. It's mid-table form, and that's perfectly acceptable for Leeds. They've very quickly solidified themselves as a mid-table team in the Premier League. Some teams come up and they do it and they look good. Sheffield United obviously last season, and who have then fallen again. I don't think this Leeds team is falling if Bielsa stays next season. If they can add 2 or 3 players, I think maybe they're running short in a couple of departments in the team, but their performances have been fantastic, and they've really added a new dynamic to the league. They're a joy to watch every time they play, just simply because of the verticality that they like to play with. And I'm also surprised that they don't look to be tiring yet. They seem more than capable at the moment of keeping up with the demands of the Premier League. So they'll be hoping that they can continue that right through the end of the season. I do think they need a couple more additions in midfield. I don't think Calvin Phillips was back again for this game, and they do struggle without him. They're not quite the same, and they don't really have someone who can just slip in and replace him easily at all. The players who tend to replace him, like Struijk or sometimes it's been Shackleton in there. For me, none of them do the role particularly well. They do it okay, but it's nowhere near the level of Calvin Phillips. So I think they could do with a couple of midfield players, Leeds, in the summer. They could probably do 1 or 2 other positions as well, but I think midfield should be their primary point of recruitment in the summer. For Villa, another a return to winning ways for Villa. Another very solid performance. Villa are also another team that just seem their performance is so consistent and so deliberate. Like everything they do seems very well planned out and executed. That they're at the moment they're going from strength to strength, I think, and I do think as well they are another team that if they get the right signings, recruitment is a huge part. If they get the recruitment right in the summer, and if they don't lose Jack Grealish, which is a big possibility, then they could be looking up next season as well instead of looking down. So good win for Villa. Bit of revenge. The reverse fixture ended up 3-0 to Leeds. Leeds really gave Villa a bit of a hammering on that night, so bit of revenge for Villa. Liverpool were back to winning ways. A 2-0 win over Sheffield United, a very deserved win. The Liverpool did absolutely batter the Sheffield United goal. Sheffield United a bit lucky, it was only 2-0 in the end, to be quite fair. Took Liverpool a while to get the opening goal, though. It wasn't until early in the second half, having spent the first half knocking at the door all half essentially. They couldn't quite break it down. Ramsdale was quite decent in goal. He made a few very good saves, but Curtis Jones opened the scoring. Firmino then sealed it with a second, although I don't think he gets the goal. I think it goes down as an own goal because technically his shot was going wide. But job done for Liverpool, back to winning ways. Pretty good performance, and they'll obviously look to build from there. Tonight, Monday, Everton won again, another clean sheet, a 1-0 win over Southampton. Could have been 2. They had a goal disallowed for offside from a set piece, which was correctly ruled out, but they look quite good again, Everton. Southampton did get back into it towards the end and had a couple of chances, was a bit desperate. I think Everton dropped a bit and, were trying to see the game out. Richarlison again getting an early goal in the first half, slipped similar to against Liverpool. He slipped through this time by Sigurdsson, rounded the goalkeeper and finished. It was a very good finish from Richarlison, and they try to push on in their bid for a top 4 spot, and they're looking strong. Everton, they're riding out the ups and downs of the season quite well, and they had Alan back in today. Dominic Calvert-Lewin was back in. So if they can keep players fit, they are a serious threat for a top 4 space, and I think Chelsea and Leicester will be looking over their shoulder. At Everton, you can say United too. That's just my wishful thinking that we won't be looking over our shoulder at anyone outside the top 4. It would require a bit of a collapse on our end, but yeah, Everton are certainly pushing for a top 4 spot, and they look as good as anyone who's in the hunt. So they'll be hoping to just keep relatively injury free from now until the end. Of course, everybody will. But I think we saw they went through a little bit of a rough patch when a couple of players dropped off. So maybe they can't quite handle key personnel getting injured as much as a couple other teams maybe can. So for Southampton have really just lost their edge at the moment. They were doing really well in the first half of the season. They've fallen off significantly since. They did have lots of injury issues, to be fair. I believe that Ralph Hasenhuttl is a really good manager. I don't think they should be looking to move him on. At the same time, if this form continues to the end of the season, that's probably what will happen. I don't know the exact reasons why. I think he does play a quite demanding style of football, and maybe that mixed with the fact that the squad wasn't so big to begin with, and then they've had so many injury issues. Maybe that's leading to the overall bad form. Is that mismanagement? Is the style of football too rigorous for the squad that they have? Is it the fault of the board above them for not getting in reinforcements? Yeah, only time will tell, I guess. But they definitely need to arrest that form quick, because they're still not too far gone to not get dragged into the relegation battle, especially given how well Fulham are going of late. They can't rule it out, so they need to arrest that form quick and try and solidify that mid-table spot. Arsenal got a very impressive win away to Leicester. Leicester losing again at home. Lost a lot of home games this season, Leicester. They took an early lead. Yuri Tielemans, they won the ball back on the right hand side. Tielemans just went straight from the right wing towards the front post, ran all the way unchallenged and scored. And if you look at the replay, I'm just baffled by Pablo Mari's defensive positioning. He at first retreats to stop any pass from Tielemans into Jamie Vardy. I understand that. David Luiz is then behind him on the cover, and eventually, maybe it was a miscommunication from Luiz, but Mari should be checking his shoulder to check the situation as well. Eventually, Mari should just push across to Tielemans and let David Luiz and the incoming defensive midfielders handle anything that might go across the box. But he doesn't. It's very, very poor. He basically lets Tielemans run all the way in on his goalkeeper and score. Very poor defending from Pablo Mari. Didn't matter though, because Arsenal did get away with the win in the end anyway. They were given a penalty. He was then ruled out. They got a free kick instead, and from that free kick routine, they scored a very good goal. Leicester basically lined up outside the 6-yard box. Arsenal players dotted along that line, and David Luiz at the very end of it. They go to take the free kick. The Arsenal players run forward, kind of making the line push a bit towards their own net, and David Luiz comes from the back to take that vacated space, and that's where the ball came straight into, and David Luiz got a very good diving header to put it back across the goalkeeper. It was a very, very well worked free kick, a good goal for Arsenal. They then got a penalty again, this time for Ndidi handballing. I don't know why his arm was all the way up here. No idea what he was doing. Lacazette dispatched the penalty 2-1. And as Leicester were pushing forward, trying to get an equaliser, Arsenal picked them off on the break in the second half. Nicolas Pepe, who started the move and played the ball through, getting a bit of luck as Willian popped it between the kind of popped it through the goalkeeper, and Pepe was in front of the net to just slot it home for the easiest tap in he'll ever get. And a good goal on the counter attack for Arsenal, and a very good win. They'll be hoping to spark up some momentum from that. I'm not convinced they will. I don't think they've shown that they're really capable of putting a winning run together, but they definitely show good form in some individual games. They've obviously got a good squad overall. It's hard to see with their involvement in the Europa League, though, whether or not they'll be able to put a run together in the Premier League. They need to put a run together just to make sure of a Europa League spot at this point, never mind a Champions League spot. So I think they're approximately 9th at the moment, Arsenal. I think they'll probably move up a position or two before the end of the table, or before the end of the season, but that's probably it, just given that they're in the Europa League as well. So we will see. But a good win this weekend after their advancement and beating Benfica midweek. So good week overall for them. Switching to La Liga now. One game I did have the pleasure of watching was Sevilla 0, Barcelona 2 on Saturday. I thought it was a very, very good performance from Barcelona, the best I've seen of them certainly this season. That was the most convincing I've seen them play in a while. I did think Sevilla were poor. The first goal comes pretty early on. Messi has the ball in midfield, nobody putting pressure on him at all, and yet Sevilla keep a high line. Ousmane Dembele takes advantage of that, runs straight through, and Messi plays him in. Dembele is always going to beat any one of the Sevilla defenders for pace. So to be that wide open with no pressure on the ball, and a runner like Dembele is just criminal defending. Dembele goes right through on goal and brilliantly dispatches the finish into the far bottom corner on his left foot. He's a right-footed player, so it was a very good finish from Dembele. Sevilla made a couple of chances of their own, not a whole lot. It's quite poor, to be honest, overall. I think they had an XG of 0.12 or something, Sevilla, which is almost nothing. It's quite poor. So it was 1-0 at half time. Second half, Messi gets the second. Again, he cuts in from the left, plays a 1-2 with someone. The defending is minimal. Messi's through. He does beat about one or two players, gets a bit of luck to get through slash around the goalkeeper, and slots it home. But it was overall just the application on the defensive side of things from Sevilla was extremely poor, and a bit of a letdown. I was expecting a bit more from Sevilla in this game, but Barcelona win. They closed that gap to Atletico Madrid, who did go on to win on Sunday, but they look very much back in the title race now, Barcelona, even given all the serious rebuilding issues that they do have going on. They find themselves in the thick of a title race, which I guess shouldn't be a surprise in Spain. It's only a surprise the other way around when Barcelona or Real Madrid are not in one. But at this moment, they're within catching distance of Atletico Madrid, who have fallen off a bit recently. But like I said yesterday, got back to winning ways with a 2-0 win at Villareal. A Villareal team who were quite decent in this game, I thought. Certainly had their fair share of the chances, if not the most. But Atletico Madrid getting the early enough lead through a set piece. Stefan Savic getting up from a free kick put in towards the back post and winning it well. Not only getting the ball into the net, but a defender into the net as well. It was an aggressive and physical attack of the ball, which is what you need at set pieces. And yeah, from there I think the chances favoured Villareal overall in terms of quality, but Atleti did enough to keep them out at one end, keep the clean sheet, and then João Felix got a superb second goal to kill off the game and secure the 3 points for Atletico Madrid. He was just on the edge of the box, and the ball was passed back to him from a deeper position. He chested it down and volleyed it almost all in one motion, very cleanly and crisply into the far bottom corner. A superb display of technique, which shows exactly what João Felix is all about. I must say, when they bought him for 100 million from Porto, I think it might have been more than that. I hadn't seen him play for Porto. I saw him at Atletico Madrid last season. Wasn't too impressed. Questioned a little bit, like, was this really worth it, or did they just get extorted because they had just sold Griezmann for 100 million to Barcelona, and therefore Porto were saying, well, you pay the same for Felix, and they paid it. From what I've seen this season, he looks like a generational talent, and I think even though it's an extraordinary fee, at the moment, I think he's blossoming into a player who will be worth that fee. Watched him a lot in the Champions League, of course, but a good few times in La Liga as well, and I think he's really blossoming into a top class player. He's definitely one of the best of his generation. Just extremely quick and fluid with every little thing he does. Very, very quick thinker in attack. And like I said, technically he's one of the best around already, João Felix. He's very, very impressive technically. It looks like everything he does was scripted. So yeah, impressed by him. Impressed by Atletico Madrid. Again, back to winning ways. And personally hoping that they can go on and maintain this lead and extend it if possible and win the league. But there's still a lot of football to be played. They play Real Madrid next week in the Madrid derby, which will be a huge game. So very much looking forward to that. Other games going on this midweek. Manchester City are playing Wolves in the Premier League. Manchester United will be playing Crystal Palace. So a couple of decent Premier League games there. No European fixtures when I say European, I mean Champions League or Europa League fixtures. This midweek, they will be back next week. So the second leg of the Champions League games and the last 16 of the Europa League, featuring Manchester United against AC Milan, which I'm very much looking forward to. Would rather it was in the Champions League last 16, but we are where we are. AC Milan are where they are, so still good to play them. Still a classic European tie, so looking forward to that. Okay, that's about it. I'm going to leave it there for now. Thank you very much for watching. If you want to leave a comment below to agree or more importantly to disagree, let's have a back and forth about anything that I've said here today. And other than that, have a good week and thanks for watching. Cheers.